Before time had a name, before earth and sky were divided, there was only chaos. Not chaos as noise or destruction, but a vast, silent emptiness, endless and formless. In this deep stillness, the first truths of existence slowly began to awaken. From chaos emerged Gaia, the earth, solid and eternal, a living foundation upon which all life would one day rest. Alongside her came Tartarus, the deep abyss beneath the world, and Eros, the quiet force of desire and connection that would bind the universe together. These first beings were not gods in the way later myths would describe, but elemental powers, calm and patient, shaping reality simply by existing. Gaia, the earth, did not remain alone for long. From her own being she gave birth to Uranus, the sky, who stretched himself above her in a vast, star-filled dome. Together, earth and sky formed the first great union of the cosmos. Their bond was constant and unbroken, night and day locked in an eternal embrace. From this union came the first divine generation, the Titans, immense beings of raw power who embodied the deep forces of nature. There were 12 Titans in all, including Oceanus of the endless seas, Hyperion of light, Thea of vision, Mnemosyne of memory, and Cronus, the youngest and most cunning among them, yet not all of Gaia's children were welcomed by Uranus. She also bore the Cyclopes, giants with a single blazing eye, and the Cenomanes, monstrous beings with 100 hands and 50 heads. Uranus, fearing their strength and strangeness, pushed them deep into Gaia's body, imprisoning them within the earth itself. Gaia suffered greatly, groaning beneath their weight, and her pain slowly turned into quiet fury. She began to seek a way to free her imprisoned children and to end Uranus's unyielding rule. From her depths, Gaia crafted a great sickle of unbreakable stone and called upon her Titan sons to rise against their father. One by one, they refused, trembling before the power of the sky. Only Cronus stepped forward. Ambitious and sharp-minded, Cronus accepted the weapon and hid himself, waiting for the moment when Uranus would descend to embrace Gaia once more. When that moment came, Cronus struck, severing Uranus from the earth and ending his reign forever. From the blood that fell upon Gaia were born new beings, the Furies, spirits of vengeance, the giants, embodiments of raw strength, and the Melee, nymphs of the ash trees. Thus began the age of the Titans. Cronus took his father's place as ruler of the cosmos, and for a time, the universe knew a strange and fragile peace. Cronus married his sister Rhea, and together they ruled over gods and mortals alike. But the shadow of prophecy soon darkened Cronus's reign. Gaia and Uranus warned him that he too would be overthrown by one of his own children. Fear took root in his heart, growing slowly but relentlessly. Each time Rhea bore a child, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, Cronus swallowed them whole, hiding them away within himself, believing he could cheat fate. Rhea's sorrow was deep and quiet. She watched her children vanish one by one, unable to save them. When she became pregnant for the 6th time, she sought help from Gaia. Together, they formed a careful plan. When the child Zeus was born, Rhea hid him away on the island of Crete, far from Cronus's gaze. She wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Cronus, who swallowed it without suspicion. Meanwhile, Zeus was raised in secret, nurtured by the nymphs and fed by the milk of the sacred goat Amalthea, while armed dancers clashed their shields to hide the sound of his cries. As Zeus grew, so did his strength and resolve. He learned of his father's cruelty and the fate of his swallowed siblings. Guided by Gaia's wisdom, Zeus returned to challenge Cronus. Through cunning rather than force, he gave Cronus a potion that caused him to disgorge the children he had consumed. One by one, they emerged, unharmed but filled with years of silent anger. United at last, the Olympian siblings stood together, ready to claim their place in the cosmos. What followed was the Titanomachy, a war that shook the foundations of the universe. For 10 long years, the Titans and the Olympians clashed, their battles echoing across earth and sky. Mountains were torn from their roots, seas boiled, and the heavens burned with divine fire. At last, Zeus freed the Cyclopes and Cenomanes from Tartarus, earning their loyalty. The Cyclopes forged thunderbolts for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, and a helm of invisibility for Hades. With these gifts, the Olympians gained the upper hand. In the final battle, the Titans were defeated and cast into Tartarus, guarded by the 100-handed giants. Zeus and his siblings emerged victorious, and a new order was born. The age of the Olympian gods had begun. Zeus took the sky as his domain, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Though peace returned, it was a different kind of peace, fragile, watched over by powerful gods whose emotions and choices would shape the fate of mortals for ages to come. As the world settled under this new rule, the foundations of myth were firmly set. The stories of gods and humans, of love and betrayal, heroism and tragedy, were only just beginning. And beneath it all, the quiet echoes of chaos still lingered, reminding the universe that even order is born from silence. With the Olympian gods firmly established upon Mount Olympus, the universe entered a quieter phase. The great wars were over, the sky was ruled by Zeus, the seas answered to Poseidon, and the underworld lay under the watchful gaze of Hades. From their lofty heights, the gods looked down upon a world that was vast, beautiful, and still incomplete. The mountains stood tall, the rivers flowed endlessly to the sea, and the forests whispered in the wind, but there were no beings yet who could truly understand or remember the divine order that governed all things. It was Prometheus, the Titan who had sided with Zeus during the Titanomachy, who first turned his thoughts toward the creation of humankind. Unlike many of his kind, Prometheus possessed not only strength but foresight and compassion. According to ancient tradition, he shaped the first humans from clay and water, molding them gently in the image of the gods themselves. Athena, goddess of wisdom, breathed life into these fragile forms, and thus humanity awakened, small, vulnerable, yet filled with potential. They walked the earth slowly, learning its rhythms, unaware of the trials that awaited them. In these earliest days, humans lived in what later poets would call the Golden Age. They did not know hunger, illness, or war. The earth provided all that was needed, and life passed peacefully, guided by the distant but benevolent presence of the gods. Death came gently, like falling asleep, and the spirits of mortals drifted away without fear. Zeus himself watched over this age, content to let humanity grow without interference. Yet such perfection was never meant to last. As time moved forward, Zeus brought an end to the Golden Age and introduced the Silver Age of humanity. These humans lived longer as children than as adults, slow to mature and careless in their devotion to the gods. They neglected sacred rituals and ignored the divine laws that sustained balance in the world. Angered by their arrogance, Zeus destroyed the Silver Age, wiping them from the earth and allowing a new generation to rise in their place. The lesson was clear: reverence for the gods was not optional but essential. Next came the Bronze Age, a time marked by strength and violence. The humans of this era were forged from ash trees, their hearts as hard as the weapons they carried. They lived for war, building no temples and offering no prayers. Their world echoed with the clash of bronze armor and the cries of endless conflict. Eventually, they destroyed themselves, consumed by their own aggression. When they died, their spirits found no rest in the underworld, fading instead into silence. Between destruction and renewal, Zeus allowed a brief and tragic era to exist, the Age of Heroes. Unlike the ages before or after, this was a time of individuals rather than generations. Heroes such as Perseus, Theseus, and Heracles walked the earth, born from unions between gods and mortals. They were stronger and braver than ordinary humans, yet still bound by fate. Their deeds would shape legend forever, but their lives were often short and filled with suffering. After death, some were granted rest in the Elysian fields, a rare reward for extraordinary lives. As mortals struggled through these changing ages, Prometheus continued to watch over them. He saw their weakness and feared that without divine aid, humanity would not survive. Against Zeus's will, Prometheus stole fire from Olympus, hiding it within a hollow reed and delivering it to mankind. Fire transformed human existence. It brought warmth, protection, craftsmanship, and knowledge. For the first time, mortals could shape their environment rather than merely endure it. Zeus's anger was swift and absolute. To punish Prometheus, he had the Titan chained to a remote mountain, where an eagle came each day to devour his liver, only for it to regenerate each night. Yet Zeus's punishment did not end there. To further discipline humanity, he ordered the creation of Pandora, the first woman. Fashioned by Hephaestus and gifted with beauty and charm by the gods, Pandora carried with her a sealed jar, later called a box, containing unseen forces, when Pandora opened the jar, suffering poured into the world. Disease, sorrow, labor, and despair spread among humanity, changing mortal life forever. In her panic, Pandora closed the jar just in time to keep one thing inside: hope. Though suffering became unavoidable, hope remained as a quiet companion, allowing humans to endure even the harshest conditions. From this moment on, life was no longer gentle or predictable, but it was still meaningful. The final age, the Iron Age, was the world as the ancient Greeks knew it. Humans labored endlessly, faced injustice, and lived with constant uncertainty. Families turned against one another, and respect for the gods waned. Zeus watched this age with growing concern, knowing that humanity now walked a fragile path between survival and self-destruction. Yet he did not intervene completely, believing that struggle itself was now part of moral destiny. Thus, the foundations of human existence were laid, through creation, rebellion, punishment, and perseverance. Mortals were no longer children of the earth but participants in a complex cosmic order. Their stories, intertwined with those of the gods, would become the heart of Greek mythology. In the quiet moments between divine conflicts and heroic legends, humanity continued forward, guided by hope, memory, and the distant gaze of Olympus. With the shaping of humanity complete and the ages of mortals set into motion, the focus of the cosmos returned to Mount Olympus. High above the clouds, beyond the reach of ordinary humans, the Olympian gods ruled from their radiant halls. Olympus was not merely a mountain but a symbol of divine order, where power, authority, and balance were constantly negotiated. At its center stood Zeus, king of the gods, whose rule was defined not only by strength but by responsibility, the burden of maintaining harmony in a world shaped by both gods and mortals. Zeus had risen to power through rebellion and war, yet his reign demanded a different kind of strength. As lord of the sky and wielder of thunder, he governed storms, laws, and oaths. Lightning was not only his weapon but his warning, a reminder that divine justice could arrive swiftly and without mercy. Despite his authority, Zeus was far from distant. He watched closely over both gods and humans, intervening when balance was threatened, though his judgments were often shaped by emotion as much as wisdom. Beside Zeus sat Hera, queen of the gods and guardian of marriage and family. Her power was subtle yet immense, rooted in tradition, loyalty, and social order. Hera represented stability in a universe prone to chaos, but her role was often overshadowed by pain. Zeus's many affairs, with goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women, were a constant source of humiliation and anger. Unable to punish Zeus directly, Hera's wrath frequently fell upon those connected to his betrayals. Through her jealousy and vengeance, ancient myths explored the darker sides of divine emotion. The marriage of Zeus and Hera was not one of peace but of tension, reflecting the fragile balance of Olympus itself. Their union symbolized authority and continuity, yet it was marked by endless conflict. Arguments between them echoed through the halls of Olympus, shaking the heavens and influencing events on earth. In this divine struggle, the Greeks saw reflections of their own world, powerful institutions bound together despite personal suffering. Around Zeus and Hera gathered the other Olympian gods, each ruling a specific domain. Poseidon, god of the sea, commanded oceans and earthquakes. His temper was as unpredictable as the waters he ruled, capable of generosity one moment and destruction the next. When angered, Poseidon could shatter coastlines and drown cities, reminding mortals of their dependence on divine favor. Hades, though rarely present on Olympus, held authority equal to his brothers. As ruler of the underworld, he governed the realm of the dead with strict fairness. Unlike later interpretations, Hades was not evil but inevitable. Death, under his rule, was a law rather than a punishment. His quiet, distant presence added gravity to the Olympian order, ensuring that even gods respected the boundaries of fate. Athena, born fully armed from the head of Zeus, embodied wisdom, strategy, and reason. She was the protector of cities and heroes, guiding mortals through intelligence rather than brute force. Athena's calm logic often stood in contrast to the emotional impulses of other gods, making her a stabilizing force within Olympus. Through her, the Greeks celebrated knowledge, craftsmanship, and disciplined warfare. Apollo and Artemis, twins born of Zeus and Leto, represented harmony and balance. Apollo ruled over music, prophecy, healing, and the sun, bringing clarity and order wherever he went. His oracle at Delphi became the most sacred voice of divine will, though its messages were often ambiguous. Artemis, goddess of the moon and the hunt, guarded wild places and young life. Fiercely independent, she punished those who violated natural boundaries, reinforcing the sacredness of the untamed world. Aphrodite, born from the sea foam, governed love, desire, and beauty. Her influence was irresistible, even to the gods themselves. Love, under Aphrodite's domain, was not gentle or safe, it was powerful, disruptive, and often tragic. Through her myths, the Greeks acknowledged love as a force that could inspire greatness or bring ruin. Ares, god of war, embodied violence and chaos. Unlike Athena's strategic approach, Ares represented bloodshed and rage. He was feared rather than respected, even among the gods. His presence on Olympus was a reminder that war existed not for honor but for destruction. Hephaestus, god of fire and craftsmanship, worked endlessly at his forge beneath volcanoes. Lame from birth and cast aside by Hera, he found purpose through creation. He built weapons, palaces, and wonders for gods and heroes alike. In Hephaestus, the Greeks honored skill, perseverance, and the quiet dignity of labor. Hermes, swift messenger of the gods, moved freely between worlds. He guided souls to the underworld, carried divine messages, and protected travelers and thieves alike. Clever and adaptable, Hermes embodied transition and change, essential elements in a living cosmos. Together, these gods formed a complex and often unstable order. Olympus was not a place of perfect harmony but a reflection of life itself, full of alliances, rivalries, passions, and contradictions. Their decisions shaped the fate of mortals, while human actions, in turn, provoked divine response. As night fell over the ancient world, prayers rose toward Olympus from countless hearths and temples. The gods listened, not always answering, but always watching. In this delicate balance between divine power and human hope, the stories of Greek mythology found their enduring voice, quiet, eternal, and deeply human. Beyond the light of Mount Olympus and far below the world of the living lay a realm untouched by sun or season. This was the underworld, the inevitable destination of all mortal life. To the ancient Greeks, death was not an ending but a transition, a quiet crossing from the visible world into a hidden order governed by ancient and unbreakable laws. The underworld existed not as a place of punishment alone, but as a necessary balance to life, ensuring that the universe remained whole. The entrance to this realm was guarded by rivers older than memory. The river Styx marked the boundary between life and death, its dark waters binding gods and mortals alike through sacred oaths. To cross it, a soul required passage by Charon, the ferryman, who demanded a single coin placed in the mouth of the dead. Those left unburied or forgotten wandered the shores endlessly, unable to move forward. In this belief, the Greeks expressed the importance of ritual, remembrance, and respect for the dead. At the gates of the underworld stood Cerberus, the great three-headed hound. With serpents for a mane and eyes that never slept, Cerberus allowed souls to enter but never to leave. His presence was not cruel but absolute, enforcing the finality of death. Few living beings ever passed him, and those who did were forever changed by what they witnessed beyond the threshold. Within the underworld, Hades ruled with quiet authority. Seated upon a throne of shadowed stone beside Persephone, he governed not through fear but through law. Hades did not judge the dead, that task belonged to others, but he ensured that each soul remained where it belonged. His realm was vast and ordered, reflecting the Greek belief that even death followed structure and purpose. Persephone, queen of the underworld, embodied the cycle between life and death. Taken from the world above and bound to the realm below, she moved between both worlds with the changing seasons. When she walked the earth, spring and summer followed. When she returned to the underworld, the land grew cold and barren. Through her myth, the Greeks explained the rhythm of nature and the inescapable balance between growth and decay. The souls of the dead were judged by three ancient kings, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. They weighed the lives of mortals not by greatness alone, but by justice, honesty, and respect for divine law. Most souls entered the asphodel meadows, a gray and quiet place where existence continued without joy or suffering. It was neither reward nor punishment, but reflection. For those who had lived extraordinary lives of virtue or heroism, a different fate awaited. The Elysian fields offered peace, beauty, and rest beneath eternal sunlight. Here, heroes and the favorite of the gods found release from mortal struggle. Yet only a few were ever granted such reward, reinforcing the belief that true excellence was rare and demanding. At the deepest level of the underworld lay Tartarus, a realm of eternal punishment. Here, those who defied the gods or committed unforgivable crimes were bound to endless suffering. Tantalus stood forever thirsty beside unreachable water. Sisyphus pushed his stone uphill without end. These punishments were not random cruelty but symbolic warnings, lessons about arrogance, betrayal, and defiance of cosmic law. Above even the gods themselves existed forces older and stronger than Olympus. The Moirai, or Fates, controlled the thread of life for every being. Clotho spun the thread, Lachesis measured it, and Atropos cut it when the time came. Not even Zeus could alter their decisions. Through the Fates, the Greeks expressed a universe governed by inevitability, where power had limits and destiny ruled all. Alongside the Fates stood Ananke, the personification of necessity, and Kronos, the embodiment of time. These forces moved silently, shaping events without emotion or mercy. Gods might struggle, mortals might pray, but time and necessity continued forward without pause. In this belief lay a deep philosophical acceptance of life's uncertainty and impermanence. The underworld was not a place of terror alone, but of truth. Stripped of status, wealth, and identity, every soul became equal in death. Kings and beggars walked the same paths, judged by the same standards. This vision offered comfort to some and warning to others, reminding all that mortal actions carried eternal weight. Occasionally, the boundaries between worlds were crossed. Heroes like Orpheus and Heracles descended into the underworld, guided by courage or love. Their journeys revealed both the rigidity and compassion hidden within its laws. Orpheus nearly reclaimed his lost love through music alone, failing only by doubt. Such myths taught that even in death, hope existed, but it demanded absolute trust. As night deepened over the ancient world, the underworld remained unseen yet ever present. Every breath of life moved closer to its gates, every moment shaped by fate's invisible hand. In accepting death as part of the cosmic order, the Greeks found meaning in life itself. Mortality was not a curse, but a boundary that gave human choices their lasting significance. Long before the world grew heavy with sorrow, there was a time remembered as the Golden Age. It existed not in history, but in memory and myth, a vision of humanity as it once was, living in harmony with nature and the gods. During this age, mortals walked the earth without fear or struggle. The land gave freely, seasons were gentle, and there was no need for laws or kings, for justice lived naturally within every heart. Under the distant rule of the gods, humans of the Golden Age lived simply. They did not build great cities or wage wars. There were no borders, no weapons, and no hunger. Death came softly, like sleep, and souls passed peacefully into the next world. This era was governed not by force but by balance, reflecting a universe still close to its divine origins. Yet even this perfection carried the seed of its own end. As generations passed, humanity slowly drifted away from divine harmony. The Silver Age followed, marking the first great decline. Humans lived long childhoods and short adult lives, growing careless and proud. They questioned the authority of the gods and neglected sacred traditions. Zeus, observing this change, withdrew his favor. The earth grew less generous, and the easy life of the Golden Age faded into memory. The Bronze Age came next, bringing a dramatic transformation. Humans became hardened, obsessed with strength and conquest. Their tools and weapons were forged from bronze, and their hearts followed the same unyielding nature. War became a way of life, and the land itself suffered under constant violence. Rivers ran dark, forests burned, and the cries of battle replaced songs of peace. Eventually, humanity's aggression consumed itself, leaving nothing behind but silence. Witnessing these failures, the gods recognized that humanity could not return to its original purity. The world had changed, and so had mortals. What followed was not an age of peace, but one of consequence, the Iron Age. This was the age known to the ancient Greeks themselves, marked by endless labor, injustice, and uncertainty. Mortals struggled against nature rather than living beside it. Trust faded, families fractured, and greed took root. In the Iron Age, respect for the gods weakened. Sacred oaths were broken, hospitality was ignored, and power replaced virtue. Zeus watched as humans turned against one another, knowing that unchecked corruption threatened the balance of the cosmos. The gods did not act immediately, for suffering itself had become part of mortal destiny. Yet there were limits even to divine patience. One such moment came during the reign of Lycaon, a king whose cruelty embodied humanity's moral collapse. Seeking to test Zeus, Lycaon served him a meal of human flesh, violating the most sacred laws of hospitality. Disguised as a traveler, Zeus revealed his true form and destroyed Lycaon's palace with lightning. The king was transformed into a wolf, cursed to reflect the savagery within his soul. This myth served as a warning: civilization could quickly fall back into brutality. Humanity's corruption eventually reached a breaking point. Zeus, burdened by disappointment, resolved to cleanse the world through a great flood. Yet even in judgment, mercy remained. Prometheus's son, Deucalion, and his wife Pyrrha were warned of the coming destruction. Following divine guidance, they built a vessel and survived as the waters consumed the earth. Mountains disappeared beneath waves, and entire generations were erased. When the floodwaters finally receded, Deucalion and Pyrrha stood alone in a silent world. Guided by an oracle, they repopulated the earth by casting stones behind them. Those thrown by Deucalion became men, those cast by Pyrrha became women. From stone came a new humanity, harder, more enduring, shaped by suffering yet capable of rebuilding. This rebirth marked a turning point. Humanity would no longer live in innocence, but neither was it abandoned. Struggle, labor, and pain became permanent companions, but so did resilience and wisdom. The gods stepped back, allowing mortals to shape their own future within the boundaries of fate. The myths of decline and punishment were not meant to inspire fear alone. They reflected a deep understanding of human nature, its tendency toward excess, forgetfulness, and pride. Through destruction came renewal, and through loss came meaning. The Golden Age was gone forever, but its memory endured as a reminder of what balance once looked like. As night settled over the ancient world, humanity continued forward, imperfect yet persistent. Fields were plowed, cities rose, and stories were told beside quiet fires. The gods still watched from afar, no longer guiding every step, but ready to intervene when cosmic order was threatened. In this fragile space between freedom and fate, the true story of human history began. As the world moved deeper into the Iron Age, the distance between gods and mortals grew wider. Humanity survived, rebuilt, and endured, but life was no longer guided by divine generosity. Suffering, labor, and uncertainty had become woven into everyday existence. At the center of this transformation stood two figures whose stories shaped the human condition forever: Prometheus and Pandora. Through them, the Greeks explained why knowledge brings progress, but never without cost. Prometheus, whose name meant forethought, had always looked beyond the present moment. Unlike the Olympian gods, he felt deep concern for humanity's future. When Zeus stripped mortals of fire, leaving them cold and helpless, Prometheus defied divine law. He climbed Mount Olympus in silence, stole a spark from the sacred flame, and carried it back to earth hidden within a hollow reed. This act did more than warm human bodies, it awakened the mind. With fire came craftsmanship, metalwork, cooking, and the ability to shape the world. Humans learned to build homes, forge tools, and create communities. Knowledge spread quietly, passed from hand to hand and generation to generation. Civilization began not with divine command, but with rebellion. Yet this gift shifted the balance of power, and Zeus could not allow such defiance to go unanswered. Prometheus's punishment was designed to last forever. He was chained to a desolate mountain at the edge of the world, where an eagle descended each day to consume his liver. Each night, the organ regenerated, ensuring endless suffering. This torment was not only physical but symbolic. Prometheus endured pain so humanity could possess knowledge, making him a figure of sacrifice rather than victory. While Prometheus suffered, Zeus devised a second punishment, one aimed not at a single titan, but at all mortals. He ordered Hephaestus to create Pandora, the first woman, formed from earth and water. Each god bestowed upon her a gift: beauty, charm, curiosity, persuasion. Yet these blessings concealed a hidden purpose. Pandora was given a sealed jar, forbidden to open, though curiosity stirred relentlessly within her. When Pandora was brought among humans, her presence was both wondrous and unsettling. She represented creation, companionship, and mystery. For a time, the jar remained closed. But eventually, curiosity overcame restraint. When Pandora lifted the lid, suffering escaped into the world: illness, grief, hunger, toil, and despair. These forces spread quickly, altering human life beyond repair. In panic, Pandora closed the jar before everything could escape. One thing remained inside: hope. Though suffering now defined mortal existence, hope endured as a quiet, fragile force. It did not erase pain, but it allowed humans to rise each morning and continue. Through this myth, the Greeks suggested that hope was humanity's greatest defense against despair. Together, Prometheus and Pandora formed two halves of the same truth. Knowledge brought progress but also suffering. Curiosity led to growth, yet opened the door to hardship. The myths did not condemn learning or innovation, but warned that wisdom must be balanced with responsibility. Every advance carried consequences, and every gift demanded endurance. As generations passed, humanity adapted. People learned to live with suffering, building traditions, laws, and communities. They honored the gods through ritual, not expecting rescue but seeking favor and balance. Life became defined not by ease, but by effort. In this struggle, meaning emerged. The gods themselves were not untouched by these changes. Zeus's authority remained absolute, yet even he could not reverse what had been set in motion. The spread of knowledge altered destiny itself, allowing mortals to shape events rather than merely receive them. Heroes would soon rise, beings who challenged monsters, fate, and even the gods. Prometheus's suffering eventually ended when Heracles, on his journey of trials, freed the Titan from his chains. This act symbolized the eventual reconciliation between strength and foresight, power and compassion. Though punishment had been severe, endurance had given way to transformation. As night settled over the ancient world, fires burned in villages across the land. Around them, stories were told, of gods, titans, and the fragile courage of humanity. Knowledge had brought pain, but it had also brought memory. And memory ensured that even suffering would never be meaningless. The age of quiet endurance was ending. Ahead lay the age of heroes, where mortal courage would stand against impossible odds. In their struggles, the legacy of Prometheus and Pandora would continue, shaping every choice, every triumph, and every loss. As the long night of endurance gave way to a fragile dawn, the world entered what would later be remembered as the Age of Heroes. This was not an age defined by peace or abundance, but by individuals, mortals who stood at the boundary between human weakness and divine power. Born into a world shaped by suffering, these heroes carried within them the legacy of the gods, the burden of fate, and the quiet determination to confront what ordinary mortals could not. Heroes were often the children of gods and humans, marked from birth by strength, intelligence, or destiny. Yet they were never free from pain. Their lives were brief, dangerous, and filled with trials that tested not only the body, but the spirit. Through their stories, the Greeks explored the limits of courage and the cost of greatness, teaching that glory was inseparable from sacrifice. Perseus was among the earliest of these figures. Born to Danae and Zeus, he was set adrift at sea as an infant, abandoned by fear and prophecy. Yet fate carried him safely to shore, where he grew into his destiny. Tasked with slaying Medusa, whose gaze turned all to stone, Perseus succeeded not through strength alone, but through guidance and restraint. With gifts from the gods, a mirrored shield, winged sandals, and a curved blade, he learned that wisdom and humility were as powerful as any weapon. In Perseus's journey, the Greeks saw the triumph of intelligence over brute force. Medusa's defeat was not an act of cruelty, but a restoration of balance. Even then, victory did not bring peace. Perseus continued to wander, his life shaped by consequences and responsibility, reminding listeners that heroism was not a single moment, but a lifelong burden. Theseus, hero of Athens, represented a different ideal. Strong, determined, and deeply human, he sought to bring order where fear ruled. His greatest trial came in the labyrinth of Crete, where the Minotaur, a creature born of divine punishment, devoured innocent lives. Guided by Ariadne's thread, Theseus navigated the maze, confronting the monster at its center. The victory ended a cycle of sacrifice, but it also marked the beginning of personal loss and regret. Through Theseus, myth revealed that leadership demanded difficult choices. His successes were matched by failures, and his strength could not shield him from guilt. Athens flourished under his influence, yet his life remained a cautionary tale about pride and forgetfulness. No hero embodied suffering more completely than Heracles. Son of Zeus and a mortal woman, he was driven mad by Hera's wrath and committed unforgivable acts. Burdened by guilt, Heracles sought redemption through 12 impossible labors. Each task forced him to confront chaos, monsters, kings, and even death itself. Heracles' strength was legendary, but it was endurance that defined him. He descended into the underworld, captured Cerberus, and returned alive. He freed Prometheus, ending the Titans' eternal torment. Yet despite his achievements, Heracles never found peace in life. His suffering followed him until death, after which he alone among heroes was granted immortality, ascending to Olympus as a god. The stories of these heroes echoed across generations, shaping the values of ancient Greece. Courage, intelligence, restraint, and resilience became ideals worth striving for, even when perfection was impossible. Heroes did not erase suffering, they endured it, standing as proof that meaning could exist within struggle. As time passed, the gods grew more distant. Their appearances in human affairs became rare, their voices quieter. The world turned increasingly toward reason, law, and memory. Myths were no longer lived, they were remembered. Temples aged, rituals softened, and stories were told not as history, but as inheritance. The age of heroes faded not with catastrophe, but with silence. Humanity no longer needed gods to explain every storm or shadow. Yet the myths remained, preserved in poetry, art, and tradition. They became mirrors through which people examined fear, love, ambition, and loss. In the end, Greek mythology was never only about gods and monsters. It was about being human in an uncertain world, about choices made under pressure, hope found in darkness, and meaning created through memory. The gods ruled the heavens, but stories ruled the human heart. As the final embers of myth glow softly in the night, the journey comes to rest. The universe remains vast, time continues forward, and humanity endures, carrying ancient voices within its dreams. And so, the epic journey of Greek mythology does not truly end. It simply becomes quiet, waiting to be remembered once more.